Hello, just a little prelude. This is the second part of our $1,000,000 yen episode. If you want to see the first part, the link should be in the description. Oh yeah, if you're listening to this, there's gonna be spoilers. Yeah, it's weird. This kind of leads into I'm done with summarize. This kind of leads into like our main discussion, and I think Shin's a good example that you bring up, where it's like this show has like a lot of parts that are not very interesting at all, but it somehow touches on like very interesting stuff and then like moves away from it very, very quickly.
It rides on the coattails of its premise and the mystery very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what makes the show frustrating, right? Like, if the show would have just stuck with some of the themes, I'm gonna talk about them a little bit later, just for like a little bit longer. I think you could make a whole show on that, and maybe this is like something that's extended or like built on more in the manga or the original work. But like here, it's just like barely a thing, and like you were saying, characters that are super interesting just like disappear, and their reasoning for liking this character is also very, very vague, and their actions are very, very like unconvincing to me, right? Like they're the whole reason all these women that like come to this house, from my understanding, is like Yuki sends them out a letter saying like, hey, yo, you better come to this house and start paying this dude rent or something bad's gonna happen. But there's like tons of reasonable things you could do instead of like doing that, right? And all these women were like successful, like and like rich women, right? Like, you don't have to listen to this random threat from this girl. I get she's powerful, but you didn't know that at first. It could have just been a random dude.
But yeah, it could have just been Shin.
Yeah, it could have just been shit, right? Like there's like literally one of them's like, I'm the most famous actor in the world. I'm gonna go live in this apartment with this dude now because of this letter. I think some of the motivations might make sense, because like I think like the actor lady and Himatone's like reasoning for moving into the apartment makes sense, because they are truly simps. They really like his shit. You know what I'm saying? But like the other like four girls doesn't make sense. I guess you can say three, because Yuki's makes sense because she's crazy. That's her whole reasoning, right? But yeah, it's just a very interesting thing. Like I guess like one thing I think I'm gonna start moving into like some of these things that I think like would be interesting, and if the show focused on, would have made it like 10 times more interesting, in my opinion. And just like the first one is like a small one, but it's focused a little bit on like a cultural difference that I didn't know until I started looking into executions in Japan. In Japan, executions are done by hanging, number one. But the more like interesting part about this is they don't tell you when you're gonna be executed. They just come and do it one day.
Bro,
And at least from my understanding, it's like not very like it's not very like open. It's like a very like quiet process. So it's like literally it's like when like Kasuo finds his stamp and he stamps your paperwork, that's when you get murdered, right? That's when you get hanged. And I think that could be like, you know, a couple days, or maybe it's a couple years. Like you just don't know.
what was I gonna say? I mean, there was a joke in there. I think I was just gonna say it's just like the worst game with Jack in the Box.
It is pretty. It pretty sucks. It's like the same guard that you've been seeing for every day. He's giving you your food and stuff like that, and he's like every day. He's like he has a bag, and he's like, "Oh, this bag's just full of food, man. It's cool. It's cool. It's full of food today." And then one day he comes up there. He's like, "Oh, thanks for the food." And he's like, "I'm sorry, man. This bag's not full of food. It's empty."
And he's like, it's like to add to it, he's like working on a puzzle, and it's like 1,000 piece puzzle, and he's like finally got it down to like the last like puzzle piece, and then the guy shows up. It's time, and just puts it over his head. He's like, no, my puzzle.
I was so close. They said they were finally gonna finish One Piece.
Oh, dude, that would suck. They probably don't even get a last meal then.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's just kind of like a thing. I'm not, again, I don't know the process. If you viewer know, please let us know. I'm interested. But like, yeah, I think it just kind of happens when like whatever formalities or contracts or things that need to be done are in place, and they have you the noose ready, they will take you out and hang you. And like, I think that process can be, I'm probably, it's going to take years, because just knowing like the death penalty and generally around the world is kind of like a long process. Yeah, like not knowing, I think, is like the very like crazy scary part, in my opinion. And I think this is like an interesting part, because like, Shin's dad's on death row, and there's this whole other small like subplot that you can have where it's like you don't get time to like reconcile with people, right? Like you that's not always guaranteed, because like it's super late when Shin actually comes out to his dad and like tells him how he really feels about like his actions and how has affected his life. It has messed him up or whatever, and like there's no reconciliation for that. It's just like, hey, I'm finally saying something like kind of true about you and how I feel about the situation, and that like I feel like you're a monster. And I'm not saying you have to reconcile those things, but like he doesn't get the opportunity at all, right? Like he says that thing, and then the next day his dad is hung.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the show is that like these the women in the house like do push him to make these different decisions, but it I don't know, like I guess I'll ask you, what do you think that even that storyline really added up to in terms of like the general ending of the show? Do you think it affected his choice to kill Yuki or not? Because that seems to be like the big climax.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I think the show has a whole thing about like success and like morals, like in a way where it's like there's like you and like what you want to do, and like how success shifts that and makes that more complicated. And I think you kind of see this very clearly once like Shin gets what he wants. It doesn't make him. It makes his life way more complicated. Really, right? Like his wife just gets more complicated once he becomes successful. I think that leans into like some of the things of like, hey, the finale where it's like, I am going to be me, and the me that's me doesn't kill people in his books or in real life, right? Like I think that's the whole thing where it's like the reason why Shin is so unpopular, the reason why Shin's a genius in this show, is because he is true to himself, and he talks about true stuff. But because he does that, he has zero exposure, so he would never be recognized as a genius, quote unquote. Like I guess that's like not true, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I think it's a good point. Do you think that in the manga that more people died? Because I don't know, what kind of struck me with the show is that like there are a lot of people left alive at the end of the thing. Like that, I think only like what, two people in the house die. I guess three if you count Yuki. I thought it was gonna be more like Danganronpa, where like you slowly get whittled down.
Yeah, to the like the main, to like the last couple. To be honest, I thought the soap landlady's was gonna die, and she was best girl, so I was hoping it wouldn't happen.
I was hoping that she was the killer. Why wouldn't you notice me?
Man, I think I said this in like the other recording too. It's like this dude is so charismatic. This dude has no personality is so charismatic that the lady that her whole job is to like kind of have sex with people is like, nah, I'm willing to put in overtime for this.
Yeah, I mean that's like a whole other issue. Is like his character is like very bland, and it seems very unbelievable that people like this guy to the extent that they do. The only thing that would make sense is so anyone who's watched the show and isn't like super familiar with Japanese, like the Japanese music scene, the actor that plays Shin is like a pretty big rock star. He's in this band called Rad Wimps. They have a song on an anime. I want to say it might be Naruto, or I could be wrong, but they're a pretty big band, and that's the only thing I can think of. It's like you are you're saying that you're an author. No, we know that you're actually a rock star, and that's why everyone likes. Like everyone else knows that he's this character, this real person in real life, and they're just going along with him saying he's an actor.
this this whole show is just super meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this kind of also touches on like I think there's a cool, not a cool, but like an interesting cultural thing. I don't know if this is true in Japan, but in the U.S. I feel like so the whole crux of the story is based off of like Shin, and like it's mainly not his personality, right? It's not his personality. Is the crux is like this sin of the father, right? Like it's like, hey, your dad did some fucked up shit, and this is why we don't like you, right? And like in the US, if you were a writer and your dad did, if you became successful and your dad killed someone, like people, that would kind of make you more popular. People would want to ask you about that and wouldn't assume that like you are like the product of your dad. Like you're gonna be like exactly like him, or like be the successor, or you shouldn't promote this person because he has a father like that. Like I think in the US, people would, for better or worse, would eat that shit up and be like, hey, tell me about your dad, tell me how this feels, how does this affect your work, and all this other stuff. And like I think that's just even like that concept's not really explored much. I think only one person puts out their reasoning where it's like you shouldn't promote someone for doing like a horrible thing. You shouldn't promote someone's like siblings because they did like their parents did like something horrible or something like that. And I think that's like not the strongest point, but I think it's an interesting point. And like I think like there's, if you just dived on like that kind of like cultural difference, the show would be like interesting as well. And I don't even know if this cultural difference is true, because obviously I don't live in Japan. I don't have the politic vans waking me up at 5 a.m.
You said you don't have what? Oh, the politics fans.
Yeah.
You should vote for me. I will change this city. First, starting with noise pollution. I will cut down noise pollution by 10%.
Ohio gozaimasu. It's 4 a.m.
The perfect time to discuss your long held beliefs on politics.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I think like that would make the show interesting. Or like I wish they would focus more on that show. Another thing that I thought was like super interesting in the show that they just touch on and then leave was like this whole thing about like quality and exposure, right? Like there's this whole like subplot of like, hey, Shin is a genius, but no one sees it, and like no one reads his book. And like there's a whole scene where he's like in the like the bookstore, and his novel's out, and his novels is like on the bottom of the shelf. He just moves it to like the top of the shelf so it can just have more exposure. And I think like that's like I know it's like a silly scene, but I think like if you made the show all about this idea where it's like this dude's a good artist and people believe in him and people are telling this, but like, you know, exposure has a plot in this, right? Like if you're a genius and no one knows about you, like are you even really a genius, right? Like does it matter even if you were? But like I just find like conversation is always an interesting conversation where it's like the dude that is Shin's rival gets way more exposure than him, but it's kind of, at least from the characters' perspectives that talk about him, like his work is pretty like mundane, but he has this huge amount of exposure that automatically puts him onto like a genius levels, even though it may not be true. And like this should be like an omnipresent part of this show, and it doesn't feel that way. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it like there's so many themes swirling around. It seems very difficult to like go for either particular one. In the case of like the rivalry between Shin and the other guy and the Yandere guy, it's like kind of just like we don't know exactly. We have a kind of an idea on like what he writes or like what they write. I wish that they could like somehow go into more depth about the other characters, like stuff that he writes. From what I could tell, it seemed like it was like very like intellectual or like pseudo intellectual like stuff. And I'm just assuming that people die in there because that seems to be everyone's big hang up, is that whether or not these people die in this dude's stories? I don't know. That's a good question. Like it sort of comes down to if a tree falls in the middle of a forest, does it make does it make a sound? If you know, if someone writes the next Harry Potter and no one reads it, is it the next Harry Potter?
If some kid in Greece, I don't know, writes it in his slums or whatever, and he dies right before he submits it, and no one reads it, like, you're right, like, it's like, is that piece of work, like you're saying, like the next Harry Potter, or like, what does that mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, you know, the whole other thing with like the sins of the father too is like super interesting, where it's like, yeah, Shin's a victim too of what his father did. Like, this is why like the lady hates him so much. This is why, like, there's a specific point where he brings up, like, as soon as his father, he had a girlfriend right before all this shit happened, and then when the stuff came out with his father, she literally just ghosted him, and, like, you know, it's like this whole thing about, like, you know,
Wait, did that happen?
something.
Was that the beginning of the story?
No, that's not the beginning of the story. This is like close to the end. I think this is on episode 10 when they're considering, but he pretty much says, like, hey, I used to have a girlfriend before all this shit happens, and then, like, my father killed someone, and then she never talked to me again. Yeah, and like that very interesting thing where it's like, yeah, you know, like, people's actions can have like profound consequences on your life, even if you want them or not, right? And it's like just briefly touched on when the whole show could be about him and his dad, right? Like, I don't, it's sort of kind of frustrating when, like, the more you think about it, where it's like there's so many interesting concepts the show feels like it touches on, but just doesn't dig deep on any of them, and it just, like, doesn't decide to dig deep on any of them. And I think it could just be a timing thing, right? Maybe if the manga is like a particularly, like, longer manga, or just maybe just written different or whatever, like, maybe it dives into these subjects and stuff like that. But, you know, I can't read it, so I don't know. Is it a genius piece of work? I can't tell you. And then, like, I think the last one that's obvious that they touch on is, like, hey, you know, everyone wants to be famous until they're famous, right? And, like, you know, there's a whole bunch of scenes at the beginning of the show about Shin imagining him in that position of, like, getting this award, and then when he gets it, his life kind of goes to hell even more.
Yeah, and to be fair, it is sort of escalated by this, like, fringe element.
Yeah, and so much so, like, he pretty much resides in kind of be, like, I don't want to say not famous, but, like, living in a smaller house. I think that's like I feel like that feels like a metaphor of, like, him kind of trying to, like, ease back into, like, a like a more quieter lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, and, like, you know, again, like, is Shin a genius? Because, like, you know, all this shit was propagated by a crazy lady that didn't even like his books that much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're going in the context of the story. Like, he wasn't necessarily the last one to figure out who the person was, but he definitely wasn't the first.
That is true.
And he also was dumb enough to leave the next possible victim, alone in the house by herself.
Well, you know, and it's partly not his fault, because the women that did die, both of them were like, "Hey, I know who it is. I'm not gonna tell you."
It's like, are you gonna tell us? Nah. Like, I don't know, that was just so like it would have made more sense to me if one of the people that knew wasn't, I forget the name of is it Minori or Minami?
Yeah, Minami and he told me. No, he told me, or he something.
He told me makes a little bit more sense to me, but it didn't make any sense that, like, Minami would die, because Minami has, for one, she already operates on the dark side, like the more illegal side of society, and two, she has hitters. She has shooters by herself. Yeah. She's like, we've seen already that she is willing to kill people, but for some reason, like, she just, I don't know, maybe she's just worried about the 90% incarceration rate of Japan. She's like, nah, I'm not gonna kill this person, because I'm definitely going to jail.
You can still go to jail for running someone over, pretty much, practically.
Yeah, but he had blonde hair, so So
fuck him. He had blonde hair, and he was an orphan. But yeah, I just find the show that's like super interesting. I think the show is interesting. I wouldn't like, it's like that weird show where it's like, I feel like it's interesting, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone for real. Like it's very like in that thing, like where it's like, I think there's interesting stuff in this show, but like I don't think it's like super entertaining in a weird way.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Here's the thing. I think that would have made it like the ending a lot more interesting if they would have killed off the best girl second,
Hmm.
the fan, because
Yeah.
she's not very interesting.
Yeah, that would make things interesting, and I feel like that would shift stuff too. Or like even like going back, like you mentioned this in the last episode too when we like our first recording. You were like, what do you think of the side characters, right? Like even like just like the Soapland side character, just like diving any more into what she is, like who she is, and like why does she like Shin other than he is a playing client? Because like obviously her feelings extend further than that. Like you can even argue like why is the whole soap scene in there? Like why is this like a thing? And I guess you can make arguments about like, you know, he's living with a whole bunch of women that he can't touch and he needs like some type of relief. But like it seems it's emphasized way more like this should be a bigger part of the story. This character
Yeah.
should be a bigger part of the story.
Like unless this is just a very very common thing, like which I don't. I mean I don't know, but like
Yeah.
it's not like going to the grocery store every day. It's like, oh yeah, he goes to the I mean, even then we don't necessarily film every time a character goes to the grocery store. We just assume that he goes, but
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it seems like it would be more important. Like it does work a little bit because we do see like, I don't know, that he has like maybe troubles making connections with people
Mm.
that care about him, and he seeks out relationships where that's not possible. And it still doesn't work out for him because the people get attached. But
Yeah.
in the end, it just makes you feel like the Soapland girl was the best, was at least one of the best option,
One
the best
hundred
girls
percent.
in the show.
Soapland girl was 100% best girl somehow, and like not even like her profession. It's just like she just seemed like a good match for him.
Yeah, she
Like
just seemed like a good person.
she is the only character until like I guess the very end. Shin was like kind of open with at all for real. Like I guess you could make arguments like that happens through the show with other characters too, but like it was obvious that this connection was already like apparent before this show, right? Like Shin trusts this lady. I don't even know her name. I think her name's Blue. I think is it Owl?
Don't even know, dude.
I don't even know her name, and I feel like she's best girl.
I'm pretty sure that's a fake. I feel like that's a fake name.
Yeah, I don't know.
But no, I think that was her name. Like she does give her name in the last like scene that she's in.
And I guess before we go into like a kind of verdict of like what we like our final thoughts on the show, I think if I know what all these chairs means, bro. I don't know what the chairs mean. I just know she has lots of them. Maybe it's just like to be like, yeah, I've always been in chairs, so I've always been looking at people, and that's why I can figure out that Yuki bitch is a crazy bitch. But like other than that, I don't understand why her room's full of chairs and no beds. Her whole reason is I like chairs. I don't know.
Yeah, like to me, I was thinking like, oh, this just goes to show you how like aware I am of my surroundings, because I'm always alert because I have to be ready to like go to a scene. But it makes it even a little bit more frustrating because she kind of didn't see the the murder coming. I mean, I'm sure she like was that like she saw like that when they entered the building, but like or entered the room, but like that there's really it's too late by then. Uh, it just real quickly, like I don't know. I think they would have had like more of a use for the Soapland character if that was another character that was like in danger of Yuki, like that he wasn't expecting, or like at the end it's like, hey, I'm going like to kill the other people, starting with the Soapland person, and then that's the moment nobody when he realizes that he really does love the Soapland girl and he's willing to murder for her.
Yeah, or even just like there's so many like things you'd be like, oh, maybe she works for Yuki too, right? Like there's like so many directions you could take that, right? Where it's like there's this relationship that you've been building up the whole show and you just let it end for without any like resolution, and I don't even think you need resolutions for a relationship, but like for the amount of time you put into like filming those scenes, like you could have done like a whole bunch of crazy reveals, or like, like, yeah, use that leverage in some way somewhere else, to get the audience more on Shin's side of like making this one decision of like very tense moment of like, should I kill this person because she has effectively ruined my life and took away these people that I didn't know I really, really cared about. So much so, after this whole like show or whatever, like the ending is pretty much him writing this book, right? Like the ending of the show is him writing about these girls.
Which, speaking of meta, is incredibly meta.
Yeah, but yeah, it's weird, but yeah, chairs, man. I don't know. They're there. A chair is still a chair, even when someone's murdered there.
Yeah, I think that's everything I got. I think we can move on to the closing thoughts.
All right. Yeah. So, we're not going to go into speculation powers, but I have this place called Closing Statements Shed. Come join me. Come open this place. It's not as nice as speculation powers, but it will do. Add some coffee. But yeah, I don't know. I think the show is, I think I said this earlier. I think the show touches on interesting stuff, but doesn't like dive too deeply into it. I think these things can be resolved if they were things are probably resolved in a manga or like some other medium. But like just for the show, it's just like, I would say, just not satisfying. But even with all that, still like the show a little bit. It's like it makes it like a very hard thing for me, where it's like I like the show, but I would probably not recommend it to anyone because like I don't think it's a very entertaining show. I feel like people would get bored of it. And I think especially if you're not really invested in the hooks or whatever, you won't see to the end of the show. And I think just exploring any one of those themes just a little bit deeper makes that hook just even more enticing. And I think that's what I think about Million Dollar Yen Woman. Interesting show, has its problems. Probably would have recommended, but I'm interested enough to go try to read the manga if I can get my hands on it.
Yeah, hmm. I'd say I think the show it's fun in a lot of ways. I think it's like the first pass through to me like was pretty enjoyable. It was like something to put on when I was just like really bored and had nothing to do. When I was like, okay, I think I'm invested in the plot. To me, it sort of like unravels the more I think about it, or the further like I got to the end, and I was like, okay, like there are a lot of things that I felt like dissatisfied with, but I think the mystery of the show like really kind of takes you all the way through to, I wouldn't say until about the end. I think like once like Yuki kind of gets killed off, I immediately lost my like sort of interest for the characters.
Mm.
I didn't really care too much that when Shin got together with the librarian lady,
Yeah. Number one simp.
yeah, the number one simp. I thought that was like really lazy writing. I'm hoping it makes more sense in the manga. Uh, yeah, I think it's a like a really imperfect. I think it's a perfectly imperfect show because it works really well to like get you thinking in the terms of like a writer is like, okay, why is this house not stable? Like
Mm.
this is a this is like, I don't know. I would say the house is like, it's like a facade. It looks like a house, but when you go in and you think you're going to a house with like a lot of furnishings and like really ornate design, you go in and it's just an empty looking building because it's a facade. It's a Frank Lloyd Wright building. If anyone like gets what I mean when I say that, it has a lot of structural issues, and I think it's cool to try to figure out like what makes it not perfect. And the answer to
I
that
got you.
is there's just so many flaws in the show that it does one thing really interesting, really fairly well, and then the other things it really really drops the ball on.
Yeah, and I like, it was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but yeah, I'm wondering like how that show got rated on Netflix, and like I'm so surprised that like the manga's so hard to find, even though it got like a Netflix release and stuff like that. Like, but yeah, Like it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, but you know, that's just our opinions from two people in a station that has no name. But like, if you've watched Million Yen Woman, yes, you viewer, if you somehow made it down here, made it through all this talking and rambling by two random people, what is your thoughts? Like, what do you think of the show? Like, do you like the show? Do you think it's good? And what do you think like makes the show good in your opinion?
Quick note: the to answer your question, the show has got 7.5 out of 10 ratings on IMDb,
Okay,
which
it's not
that's
bad.
actually really surprising. I'm actually I thought it would be a lot lower.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah. Second, second I said previously that sorry. Second, I said previously that the guy from Rad Wimps did a score on the Naruto anime, and I was wrong. I looked it up, and I think it's the opening for your name.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Your name is really good.
Yeah. What it actually got more stars than there's this other show that I watched that I think is actually really really good. It's called Switched. But I've talked with you about it before. It's like the one where the two girls like switch bodies,
Yeah.
which like that one didn't seem like it had anywhere nearly as many issues. Oh, dude, it got more stars than the one that we both like, the weather, the news station.
What?
Yeah.
What? I'm
What
flipping the
was it
table.
what is it called?
Well, I like how we were like, we can't remember the name. Stay tuned, I think, or
Yeah,
like,
stay tuned.
yeah.
Wow,
Man.
that's actually really surprising.
Yeah, but like
Do you know what? Do
this
you
is
want to know
awesome.
why? Do you want to know why?
What?
Nobody why it's got more stars.
Why?
It's got more simps.
I guess that's true. And like I think the other thing we're missing here is like this is a Japanese show, and maybe some of the structural problems that we feel that are problems aren't problems in other shows. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Yeah, maybe there's just certain
like
things.
we're probably not the target audience, but that's cool. It's fine.
Yeah, maybe there are certain things that are just assumed that we don't know.
Yeah, like Japanese executions are done by hanging.
That is true, and you don't see it coming.
See, this is like one of the reasons where it's like I want to go visit Japan and stuff like that and check out the culture and stuff like that. But like with that 99, like a 90% conviction rate and stuff like that, I'm gonna be super careful, right?
Yeah.
Not breaking any laws. 90%, Jesus.
Dude, I would never ever try to do anything. For I would like no litter. I would no litter ever. I would like what? No, I was officer. I was putting this right into the recycling bin. I promise. That's the wrong recycling bin. You're putting in plastics. It's only for cans. Oh, my bad, dude. Nah, you're arrested. You're going to jail.
I just imagine like I think I don't know who made this video, but someone made a video about like things you shouldn't do Japan, and like legitimately like one of his things he put in there was like don't jaywalk, and then like the more I looked into like the legal side because like I watched this interview with like a Japanese lawyer telling like hey what visitors should do in Japan and like what if they get like arrested and stuff, and pretty much what he said was like just say you did it, just say you did it, no matter if it's true or not. His thing was like yeah don't jaywalk, and I just imagine a scene of some kid just like in the middle of the night just coming from a vending machine just like there's no cars here, I'll just cross over, and then just tons of car just comes up and it's like you're going to jail. 90% conviction rate, I seen you jaywalk.
You get Tommy thinks he's safe. FBI, open up.
But yeah. Well, yeah, just straying off the point, back to the point. Yeah, let us know what you think of the show. And if you know more about the Japanese execution and lawyer system, let's talk about that too.
And if you can somehow get us a copy of the of a translated version of $1,000,000 Yen Women, so we can offer a final review, please send DM us in the in. Does YouTube even have DMs?
No, they can like email us using like the going to the about page. Roscoe, thanks for waiting 6 months to have this conversation with me. Thanks for like as always, like talking to me on these little random talks.
No problem.
Hit the stuff, like, share if you want to. Just don't feel pressured to do it. Just do it if you want to. And if you share, don't be too aggressive when you're sharing. But yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah. Until next time. Take it easy.
Take it easy. Peace.
Peace.